The auto repair garage sat at the edge of the city, where concrete cracked under. Years of neglect and dreams came to be, fixed only temporarily. The air inside was thick with oil, grease, and the sound of metal clanging against metal. For Daniel Cruz, this garage was not just a workplace, it was survival. He arrived before sunrise, every day, and left long after darkness, swallowed the streets, his hands permanently stained with grease that no amount of scrubbing could remove. Daniel was poor, painfully so, but he carried himself with quiet dignity. He never complained, never argued, and never refused work. His boss, Victor Hale, owned the garage and everything in it, including, as he believed, the people who worked there. Victor was a man who worshipped profit and despised weakness. He wore expensive watches, spoke loudly about discipline, and constantly reminded his employees that kindness didn't pay bills. "This is a business," he often barked. "Anyone who wants charity should go to a church." Daniel had heard those words. So many times they echoed in his mind even when Victor wasn't around. Still, Daniel stayed because he had no choice. Rent was overdue, his refrigerator was almost empty, and jobs were scarce. That morning began like any other until an old, rattling sedan struggled into the garage, its engine coughing as if it might collapse at any second. Daniel looked up from beneath a car and saw an elderly woman slowly step out. She moved carefully, leaning on the door for support. Her name, Daniel would soon learn, was Mrs. Evelyn Thompson. Her coat was old but neatly buttoned, her shoes worn thin at the soles. There was fear in her eyes, the kind that comes from knowing one small problem could ruin everything. She approached Daniel hesitantly and asked in a trembling voice if he could take a look at her car. "It keeps stopping," she said. "I need it to get to my doctor." Daniel nodded and listened carefully as she spoke, giving her the same respect he would give anyone else. He checked the engine and quickly realized the issue was minor. A loose belt and a small leak that could be fixed in minutes. As he explained this, Mrs. Thompson's shoulders relaxed, then tensed again. "How much will it cost?" she asked softly. Daniel hesitated. He knew what Victor would charge. He also knew she couldn't afford it. "I don't have much," she admitted, her voice cracking. Daniel thought of his own mother, who had once delayed doctor visits because money was tight, and how she used to say that kindness was the only thing the poor could afford to give freely. Without announcing it, without making a show, Daniel fixed the car quickly and carefully. When he closed the hood, he smiled and said, "It's done." Mrs. Thompson blinked in confusion. "How much do I owe you?" Daniel shook his head. "Nothing," he said gently. "Just drive safe." For a moment, the garage seemed to hold its breath. Tears welled up in the old woman's eyes. She grabbed Daniel's hands and whispered blessings between sobs, thanking him as if he had given her far more than a repair. But kindness rarely goes unnoticed, and not always in a good way. Victor had been watching from his office, his face twisted with anger as he stormed onto the garage floor. "What is going on here?" he shouted. Daniel turned calmly. "I fixed her car. It was a small problem." Victor's eyes burned. "You fixed it for free," he snapped. "You don't get to make that decision." Customers stared. The noise of the garage faded. Victor stepped closer and pointed at Daniel. "You think you're a hero," he said. "You're stealing from me." Daniel opened his mouth to explain, but Victor didn't care. "You're fired," Victor shouted. "Right now. Pack your things and get out." Mrs. Thompson tried to speak, her voice shaking, but Victor ignored her completely. Daniel removed his gloves slowly, his heart heavy but his posture steady. He picked up his small toolbox, the only thing he owned of real value, and walked toward the exit. As he stepped outside, rain began to fall, cold and unforgiving, soaking his clothes within seconds. Daniel didn't look back. That night, alone in his tiny apartment, Daniel sat on the edge of his bed staring at his hands. He wondered how doing the right thing had cost him his job, his stability, and his future. But deep inside, beneath the fear and uncertainty, something else lived, a quiet belief that kindness mattered even when it hurt. And if you're still listening, still feeling that tension, subscribe to the channel, because what happens next proves that sometimes losing everything is the first step toward gaining something far greater.